The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Iván Duque Márquez, President of the Republic of Colombia. May I request protocol to escort His Excellency. On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honor to welcome to the United Nations His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Colombia, and to invite him to address the Assembly, Mr. President.
Señor Vicepresidente.
Vice President of the General Assembly of the United Nations. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, heads of state and of government and heads of missions, I would like to take this opportunity to convey my greetings to the President of the General Assembly and also to the Secretary General of this organization, Antonio Guterres. 1 year ago, I addressed this Assembly for the first time, laying out before you our roadmap for the crafting of a Colombia based on the rule of law, entrepreneurship, and equity. My country, which this year, 2019, is celebrating 200 years of history as an independent nation, is today charting a course towards a future of equity, where the only thing that will keep a man or a woman from following their dreams is the degree of their willingness to pursue said dreams by the sweat of their own brows. We are living in an era in which it is vital that none of us allow ourselves to be distracted from the most urgent challenges that confront us: putting an end to extreme poverty, the defense of democracy, the protection of the environment, the promotion of entrepreneurship and innovation, and the upholding of the rule of law. These are the ethical, social, and political touchstones that guide the future that we desire for Colombia. And these touchstones also shape our contribution to an international order based on multilateralism, solidarity, and autonomy. We believe sincerely and openly in the rule of law, in entrepreneurship, and in equity. These are not empty words for us. The most daunting challenge before us all is that of climate change. And, of course, its related consequences for our oceans, for our alpine tundras and moorlands, for the snow-covered uplands and mountain peaks, for our glaciers and for our coasts. As I have oft repeated throughout this week, Colombia is responsible for a mere 0.4% of all global greenhouse gas emissions. Our energy grid is the sixth cleanest in the world. We are home to 50% of the alpine tundras or paramos of the world, and more than 40% of our territory can be truly described as being covered with tropical rainforest, much of that located in our Amazon region. But Colombia is also one of the countries most vulnerable to the adverse impact of climate change. And for that reason, we believe that all of us must reflect on the best global response, to be sure, but we must also be capable of acting locally. A scant few days ago, we all witnessed the young people of this planet coming together to demand that we take action. Their words rang true, and so, presidents, heads of government, I think it is true that we can say the time is nigh to move from words to action. And I can say truthfully before you all that Colombia is indeed taking action. We have declared our biodiversity to be a strategic asset, incorporating the protection thereof within our national security policy. We are under no illusion whatsoever, in our particular case, that deforestation in the Amazon and in all of the wooded regions of our country is directly linked to illegal activity, to armed groups operating outside the law who seek spaces for their illicit activities, fueled principally by drug trafficking. In one short year, we have committed to and we have succeeded in reducing levels of deforestation by roughly 17%, and we are more committed than ever to continuing on this track. Moreover, we have set ourselves the goal of planting 180 million trees by the year 2022, so that together, moving forward in lockstep, we can protect our common home, Mother Earth. With great pride, I can share with this Assembly that at the beginning of this same month, September, together with Brazil, Peru, Ecuador, Bolivia, Guyana and Suriname, all of whom are Amazon nations, we signed the Leticia Pact. This is an international commitment to protecting the Amazon. To succeed in that goal, we will need to properly assess the risks the Amazon faces and champion successful counter-strategies. The Leticia Pact strengthens our capacity to manage, protect and prevent any damage to this common heritage of mankind, crucial as it is to our very existence. We will protect the Amazon and the Amazon regions in our respective countries whilst upholding sovereignty, as that is the appropriate model we should follow to tackle our joint problems. When it comes to protecting nature or to the fight against drug trafficking and transnational crime, whether it be a case of defending democracy and freedom, or whether we be speaking of strengthening free trade or handling the flows of migration, we have to come together. We have to be united to draw up and strengthen multilateral governance responses and approaches that will allow us to take stock of where we stand, properly identify the problems without flinching, and plot roadmaps to move towards a solution to said problems. My fellow delegates, we must work to forge a society that is more conscious of the reality that our individual time on Earth is fleeting, but the damage we can leave in our wake can be permanent. Our capacity to create new alternatives and paradigms for development needs to be backstopped by our creativity in order to ensure that we avoid any negative impact by our future actions. A year ago, as my government took office, barely 0.1% of our energy matrix was tied to unconventional renewable energies, such as solar energy or wind energy. And we set ourselves the goal as an incoming government of boosting that level and of moving from the some 50 megawatts of output that we were seeing at the time we took office to an output of 1,500 megawatts by the end of our mandate. This is a genuine energy and environmental revolution. It's a major pledge made to our environment. We know that this is a major challenge. More action is required by each and every one of us, by the international community, by business leaders, and by the leaders of civil society. But I believe that together we can walk this path and pull in the same direction. We believe in the heady mix of the rule of law, in the promotion of entrepreneurship, and in the quest for equity. And it is against that backdrop that we seek to succeed in our aim of closing social and economic divides and gaps. Today, I can truthfully say to all of you that we have been unflagging in our attempts to overhaul our productive model in Colombia. Today, more than ever before, Colombia is firmly on track towards an innovative economy based on value-added services. And it is for that reason that we support and that we will continue to staunchly support the setting up of family, micro, small, medium and large enterprises. We will continue to support the orange economy. We will continue to support new technological developments and each and every idea and aspiration that entrepreneurs propose to ensure that the world at large can benefit from the ingenuity, the efforts and the optimism of the people of Colombia. With this mindset, and fully aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals through our own development plan that frames our actions for the next few years, the Pact for Colombia, the Pact for Equity, and a legislative package of measures for economic regalvanization, we are succeeding in reducing the tax burden for our businesses, and we are putting forward incentives in order to ensure that our country can compete on an unhandicapped basis in all international markets. As the fruit of these initiatives, at a time of major headwinds for the regional economy, indeed for the global economy, we are growing above the average rate for countries in the region. And this economic growth rate has attracted the attention of investors from around the world. Without a shadow of a doubt, we are a resilient nation that innovates and grows with equity. That is Colombia today. For that reason, today, despite the myriad obstacles ranged against us, Colombia is ploughing ahead with the forging of a culture of the rule of law, under which, whilst recognizing our differences, we choose as a society to pursue coexistence peacefully, a coexistence in which the rule of law stands as the indissoluble union of justice and security. A year ago, I declared before you all here in this assembly hall that my government would continue to work for the process of demobilization, disarmament and reintegration, and to ensure that said process will be successful. Today, I come to tell you that the work remains to be done, but a firm step towards that end has been taken towards our goal of peace based on law. Today, more than 29 collective productive projects have been rolled out, bringing together 1,934 people who are using them to forge a new life. And in total, more than 13,000 Colombians continue to be part of the process of reintegration into broader society. Satisfied that we are sparing no effort and cannot be accused of idleness, I am able to stand before you all and say that today I'm speaking on behalf of a single unified nation, convinced of the need to stamp out violence using the tools of the law. I wish to reiterate my appreciation for the invaluable support and work of the United Nations Verification Mission. The support and backing of the international community has been absolutely essential in this process of stabilization. And we genuinely hope that the international community will continue to accompany us on this path that we are forging for ourselves, this path of peace within the framework of the law. And in the same way that we have sworn to support those who choose the path of legality and indeed are so supporting them, we also warn those who wish to persist in a life of crime of the consequences of that choice. A scant few weeks ago, a group of drug terrorists sought to intimidate Colombia, hiding behind claims of ideological goals. But the reality is that these groups have not enjoyed the fruits of reintegration nor disarmament simply because they did not choose to. They have not left behind their life of crime. They have lied to Colombian Colombians, and they have aligned themselves with the dictatorship which is oppressing the people of Venezuela. In their attempt to intimidate us, they were met foursquare by a government that will not bow before threats, and above all, they found themselves resisted by a people that will not be cowed and that were rather outraged when these criminal groups sought to clothe their claims in righteousness. Let there be no room for doubt. As President of all Colombians, I will do my utmost. I will use all tools available to me to guarantee that Colombia enjoys peace based on the rule of law, and in this conviction we will not give even a millimetre of ground. The violence that flared up a few weeks ago finds its support in the illegal economies based principally on drug trafficking. When my government took office, we found ourselves faced with some 200,000 hectares that had been planted with coca plants across the country. But we have made huge efforts since then, and for the first time in 7 years, we have been able to stop the previous exponential growth of said coca plantations in its tracks. In the time that my government has been in office, we have been able to eradicate and substitute with legal crops more than 90,000 hectares, and we will not stop here. We will not rest on our laurels. Drug trafficking preys on the environment, on human society. It is a viper's nest of corruption, and it is the lifeblood of terrorism. The more coca that is grown, the less peace that we will have. And for this reason, the fight against drug trafficking and the illicit economies that underpin it is a battle that requires the buy-in and support of all nations as we seek to stamp out the perversions of the production, distribution and consumption of drugs. No country is safe from this threat. Drug trafficking is a global problem, and so it must be met with a global response. I can say with conviction that one of the worst consequences of drug trafficking is the degree to which it fuels corruption, the degree to which it weakens institutions, and the way in which it poisons and rips apart the fabric of society. The fight against corruption unifies all of us here in this room, and it also unifies each and every Colombian. We stand together in the fight against this blight, this stain on humanity, corruption. There is no political, social, or cultural system that will not be led to the brink if its institutions are poisoned with the venom of corruption. In Colombia, we are taking effective measures for transparency, such as the accountability law, which governs the actions of all public servants of the nation. We're not alone in this fight. Together with friendly nations, we are driving forward a project to establish the International Anti-Corruption Court, because just like drug trafficking, this scourge of corruption is no respecter of borders, and the international community needs a strong tool that will allow it to withstand and push back against the phenomenon of transnational corruption. Colombia is a firm proponent of multilateralism as a way of integrating not just economies, ideas, and policies, but also because we believe that multilateralism is the fount of the solutions we seek to the problems we are faced with. Solutions that need to be based on inalienable principles such as solidarity, brotherhood, the love for freedom, full respect for the decisions of peoples and their right to make such decisions for themselves, and the unfettered defense of democracy. Solutions anchored in the rejection of any form of tyranny and based on the economic pillars of free trade, the rights of workers, and freedom to innovate. Since 2015, at least 4.2 million people have fled Venezuela, pushed to that dramatic step by the brutal dictatorship of Nicolás Maduro. They flee from a nation that was wealthy and is now in the abyss, that cannot feed its people. They are fleeing from a country that was a flourishing democracy and is now an authoritarian regime without a functioning media nor freedoms. A country that lived in peace and whose people are now suffering oppression, that was an economic power and whose economy now lies in ruins. And its citizens have no choice but to jump ship. Colombia has hosted approximately 1.4 million Venezuelans who are fleeing hunger and despair. And we are doing so aware of our responsibility. We have welcomed them with open arms, motivated by the ethical principles of solidarity and brotherhood. Precisely because we understand the due difference that exists between our brother peoples of Venezuela and the regime which is crushing them beneath its boot, we extend the hand of friendship to our brothers and sisters who continue to flood across our border. We know full well that solidarity and fraternity must take the guise of tangible material actions and policies. We have rolled out various instruments and vehicles to support Venezuelans. We have played host to 25,000 children of Venezuelan parents who have been born on Colombian soil since 2017 and who run the risk of being left stateless. Every child around the world has the right to a nationality, and with affection, with warmth, and with determination, Colombia has provided that statehood to these 25,000 children. The migration crisis that we warned of a year ago in this very chamber is a reality. It gets worse every day because the dictatorship in Venezuela continues in power. The Venezuelan tragedy has a name, and we all know what that name is. Colombia's stance in response to the dictatorship in Venezuela is not a matter of geopolitical dispute or point scoring. Rather, we adopt this stance driven by the need that we see for the Venezuelan people to have their democracy restored. We're not calling just for the freedom in Venezuela alone. The Lima Group and more than 50 nations around the world have duly recognized the legitimate presidency of Juan Guaidó, and they are actively participating in denouncing and shedding light on all the crimes of the current dictator. As President of Colombia, I make a respectful appeal to all of you, calling on you all, together within the framework of international law, diplomacy, and the instruments of multilateralism, to work together to restore to Venezuela its democracy, to restore to Venezuela its freedom. Ladies and gentlemen, the time has come to call a spade a spade. The Venezuelan dictatorship is one more link in the chain of transnational terrorism. Its corrupt structures are the handmaidens of drug cartels. Its followers are adherents of the mafia and fuel the violence in Colombia. The dictatorship plays refuge to murderers and the rapists of children. And those who ignore these facts are, by their silence, accomplices of the dictatorship. They are complicit with its actions. My government has credible and resounding proof that corroborate the support lent by the Venezuelan dictatorship to criminal and drug trafficking groups and narco-terrorist groups that are operating in Venezuela and pursuing their activities in Colombia as an assault on our nationhood. As President of Colombia, I will hand over the evidence underpinning this claim to the President of this Assembly and to the Secretary General of the United Nations. This dossier, which I hold up before you now, of 128 pages, contains overwhelming proof that demonstrates the complicity of the regime of Nicolas Maduro with the terrorist cartels who are attacking the people of Colombia. Addressing the international community, I say that we will submit to your attention a list of some 20 criminals who betrayed the generosity of the Colombians and today reside in various cities of Venezuela, supported by and protected by the Venezuelan dictatorship. We will also reveal to you the location of more than 1,438 armed men belonging to the most dangerous and radical wings of the ELN. And we can also share with you, we will indeed share with you, 207 sites controlled by this criminal organization, the ELN, in Venezuelan territory. The testimonies of Venezuelan citizens who complain of the presence of the ELN in their territory and the undeniable presence of these criminals in training camps in these areas, as well as the existence of 20 landing strips used for the nefarious and underground activities of drug traffickers, are unequivocal proof of the dictatorship's sponsorship of these criminal structures of transnational organized crime. Venezuela, my fellow presidents, has become a breeding ground for criminal activities linked to the ELN. Criminal activities which are no respected for borders. Those strong men and those criminals that today enjoy the support and refuge provided by Nicolas Maduro are the same people who for years attacked our wind farms, causing irreparable environmental damage. This conduct cannot be countenanced. And as head of state of Colombia, I have a duty to denounce what's going on before the international community. Let yourselves not be deceived. Colombia is not, has never been, and will never be an aggressor state. We will not allow ourselves to be provoked into such action by bellicose insinuations. But we will always raise our voice to denounce tyranny. Venezuela, my fellow delegates, needs to see an end to the usurpation of power under which it is currently suffering. It needs to see the installation of a government of transition towards democracy, a government that will allow for economic and social recovery and rebuilding. Venezuela needs the urgent convening of genuinely free and fair elections, and it needs the full restoration of the rule of law across the land. The crimes of Nicolas Maduro against his people can be justly compared with those of Slobodan Milosevic in the former Yugoslavia. We cannot sit idly by and merely watch this suffering in our beloved Latin America. And for that reason, on the 23rd of September, the day before yesterday, the 30th meeting of the Ministers of Foreign Affairs of the Organization of American States acting as the advisory body for the implementation of the Inter-American Treaty on Reciprocal Aid and Assistance, adopted a historic resolution. In said resolution, it indicated that the participation of authorities and entities linked to the regime of Nicolas Maduro in illegal activities, in particular in drug trafficking, asset laundering, terrorism and the financing thereof, corruption and the violation of human rights, are a regional threat. For 16 countries in Latin America, it is glaringly obvious that the dictatorship in Venezuela is violating the obligations established in Resolution 1373 of the year 2001, a resolution of the United Nations Security Council. For that reason, we reaffirm resoundingly before you all that the set of criminal activities tied as they are, or the cause as they are, of the humanitarian crisis triggered by the deterioration of the political, economic and social situation in the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, represent a threat to the maintenance of peace and security in our continent of Latin America. I want to reiterate, I want to hammer home the point that this challenge needs to be met by ongoing collective action as a tangible vehicle of the principle of global solidarity. And said action in response to what we're seeing in Venezuela needs to be multilateral at all times and to uphold the primacy of multilateralism. We are a loud and clear voice in the region calling upon the regime of Maduro to end its support for narco-terrorist groups. We urge the international community to adopt the commensurate measures and sanctions to safeguard the rights and freedoms of the present and future generations of Colombians and indeed, as I hope goes without saying, of our Venezuelan brothers and sisters. In light of the aforementioned, here where the world comes together on this stage, in this chamber, I pledge to you solemnly that Colombia will continue to defend democracy in Venezuela. But my fellow delegates, without your support, without the support of each and every one of you, without your genuine support, those who fled Venezuela dreaming of the day when they could return home will find that path to return home cut off from them forever. We will continue working actively and passionately for the forging of a Colombia where the rule of law prevails, a Colombia of entrepreneurship that promotes individual initiatives, dreams and freedoms, and which closes social gaps and divides. All of our efforts as a government drive towards that aim, that dream of equity. Today, Colombia declares to the world that time has come where we must make a choice to transform our societies. The time has come to stand firm, to resist tyranny. This is a time of greatness. We must take action to ensure that each and every citizen in this world can live with dignity. Thank you very much indeed.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank His Excellency the President of the Republic of Colombia for the statement just made. May I request representatives to remain seated while we greet the head of state.